Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamanatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Astatarasatasi Srimada's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantharadar Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Pimanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'm going to read two verses this morning, not just one, 28 and then 29, because they fit together. Krishnasya gopyo ruchiram Diksha Komara Chapalam Shinvantya Kiratan Matur Iti Hochu Samagata Krishnasya Gopyo Ruchiram Viksha Komara Chapalam Shinvantya Kilatan Matur Iti Hochu Samagata. Krishnasya Gopyo Ruchiram Viksha Komara Chapalam Shinvatya Kilatan Matur Iti Hochu Samagata. Krishnasya Gopyo Ruchiram Viksha Komara Chapalam Shinvantya Kilatan Matur iti hochu samagata Krishnasya of Krishna. Gopyaha, all the gopis. Ruchiram, very attractive. Viksha, observing. Kumara chapalam, the restlessness of the childish pastimes. Shinvantya, just to hear them again and again. Kila, indeed. Tat mataho, in the presence of his mother. Iti, thus. Ha, indeed. Ochoho, said. Samagata, assembled there. Translation: observing the very attractive childish restlessness of Krishna, all the gopis in the neighborhood, to hear about Krishna's activities again and again, would approach Mother Yashoda and speak to her as follows. Purport: Krishna's activities are always very attractive to devotees. Therefore, the neighbors, who were friends of Mother Yashoda, informed Mother Yashoda of whatever they saw Krishna doing in the neighborhood. Mother Yashoda, just to hear about the activities of her son, stopped her household duties and enjoyed the information given by the neighborhood friends. But the information was a little tough for a mother to hear. Here's what they said, text 29. Our dear friend, Yashoda, your son, sometimes comes to our houses before the milking of the cows and releases the calves. And then, when the master of the house becomes angry, your son merely smiles. Sometimes he devises some process by which he steals palatable curd, butter, and milk, which he then eats and drinks. When the monkeys assemble, he divides it with them. And when the monkeys have their bellies so full they won't take any more, he breaks the pots. The son, sometimes, if he gets no opportunity to steal butter or milk from a house, he will be angry at the householders, and for his revenge, he will agitate the small children by pinching them. Then, when the children begin crying, Krishna will go away. Purport: the narration of Krishna's naughty childhood activities would be presented to Mother Yashoda in the form of complaints. Sometimes Krishna would enter the house of a neighbor, and if he found no one there, he would release the calves before the time for the cows to be milked. The calves are actually supposed to be released when their mothers are milked, but Krishna would release them before that time, and naturally the calves would drink all the milk from their mothers. When the cowherd men saw this, they would chase Krishna and try to catch him, saying, "Here is Krishna doing mischief." But he would flee and enter into another house, where he would again devise some means to steal butter and curd. Then the cowherd men would again try to capture him, saying, "Here is the butter thief, better to capture him." And they would be angry, but Krishna would simply smile, and they would forget everything. Sometimes in their presence he would begin eating the curd and butter. There was no need for Krishna to eat butter, since his belly is always full, but he would try to eat it, or else he would break the pots and distribute the contents to the monkeys. In this way, Krishna was always engaged in mischief making. If in any house he could not find any butter or curd to steal, he would go to a room and agitate the small children sleeping there by pinching them. And when they cried, he would go away. This is chapter 8. Krishna shows the universal form, which precedes chapter 9, which is Mother Jasoda binding Krishna. So in one sense, this is preliminary. Chapter 8 is preliminary to chapter 9, so that we become ready to hear about the Damodar Leela. So keeping the flow of Krishna's pastimes in mind like that. The previous verse spoke about Balaram. Krishna, along with Balaram, began to play with other children of the cowherd men, thus awakening the transcendental bliss of the cowherd women. So this is at the stage where Krishna's, instead of just crawling, is starting to toddle. Toddlers, an American expression, means a little child can not walk properly, but they kind of sway back and forth and move along. Developmental stages, in the Western terminology, child development. So Krishna performed these pastimes as if he was one of us, as if he was an embodied person. He plays the part perfectly. He's not. He's the Supreme Person. But the childhood pastimes are his pleasure. They're for his pleasure. And part of his pleasure is giving pleasure to his devotees. That's his happiness. And the happiness of devotees is giving pleasure to Krishna. So then the parents, or even other than parents, adults, seeing that stage where a child is learning to go from crawling to walking, it's like an endless fascination for observing and smiling and happily enjoying. So what to speak of pure devotees and the personality of Godhead? The childhood pastimes of Krishna are very charming. And some persons who are worshippers of Krishna, they like his childhood pastimes best because they have a hard time dealing with Krishna's activities with the young gopis in the sense of mundane morality. It's not moral. And so they prefer his childhood pastimes because they're more, innocent. But here we're hearing stealing, and stealing not so innocent. So what's with this stealing pastime? The in-between verse is Balaram. So Balaram is there to assist Krishna in his childhood pastimes. So they're always together. And all of the residents of Vrindavan are there to assist Krishna in his pleasure pastimes, and Krishna in his pleasure pastimes is doing things with each of the residents according to the full spectrum of rasa. Krishna's giving pleasure. And the giving of pleasure in love sometimes looks contrary. Sometimes. In fact, more than sometimes, it looks contrary. So that's the case with the stealing. because they're coming to Mother Jasoda. It specifically said they came to Mother Jasoda's home in the mood of making a complaint. But their happiness is not in complaining about Krishna. Like a materialist might complain about this, what kind of person is the stealer and the with young ladies, and when he's a little older, and that kind of complaining it's a transcendental. Worldly people cannot understand transcendental emotion. Transcendentalists are not attracted to mundane emotion. Transcendentalists are moved by transcendental emotion. So sometimes, in spiritual matters, the associates of Krishna will complain about Krishna, or sometimes Krishna will complain about the associates. There was this nice exchange during our visit to Puri, where Lord Chaitanya wanted to go to South India. He wanted to go alone. And they objected, no, you can't go alone, take us with you. And then Lord Chaitanya started reciting why he didn't want to travel with them. And he was speaking as if he was criticizing them. Nityananda this, and Damodar Pandit that, and Jagatananda, forget it, and this one, that one. And actually, the commentary explains, he's citing their intense love for him. They have such intense love for him. It's their qualification. So it looked like criticism, but it was actually appreciation of their intense love for him. But he had a purpose, and his purpose was specific to the complaint. He wanted, when traveling in South India, to display the activities, to demonstrate the activities of a strict sannyasi. And when the activities of a strict sannyasi were shown to Mukunda Datta, Lord Chaitanya said, Mukunda doesn't say anything, but I know his heart, and he's very disturbed when I do austerities. And his disturbance doubles my disturbance. So I don't want to travel with any of you. This is his most confidential associates that came with him after sannyas, by his invitation and arrangement and so forth. Because he wanted to perform the pastime inappropriately as a sannyasi, observing externally, observing austerities, and that was disturbing to them. So he was determined to do that, and he didn't want to disturb them, which would disturb him. And so he spoke as if criticizing. And they didn't take it, oh, he's criticizing us. He doesn't understand we have love for him. They didn't go there. But sometimes, like the gopis would criticize Krishna, the young gopis, when Krishna would do this and that. And here's the elder gopis, this is Mother Jasoda's peer group, and they have love for, they have parental affection. And in their parental affection, it was their happiness that Krishna would do what Krishna did. And Krishna did for their purpose of their happiness. And the purpose of their happiness could have been achieved differently. For example, he could have smilingly toddled up and said, can you give me some butter and some yogurt? They would have gladly done that. In fact, it's part of the commentary. Mother Jashoda notionally says, if he wants butter and yogurt, you have so much butter and yogurt, give him butter and yogurt. And they say, we try, but he won't eat it. He wants to steal. So he devises various means to steal. And one of his means to steal is, we're engaged in our household duties, so to empty out the house, he takes the place where the calves are kept, and he releases the calves to go to where the cows are before the milking time. And that's a problem for our calves and for our cows. And so we leave the house, we stop our household duties to go take care of the calves, and Krishna then enters the house that's now empty and looks around for some butter and yogurt and dairy products. And he starts eating, and he calls, even if they don't come, he calls the monkeys and he divides it. Some for them, some for him. And the acharyas comment, he doesn't need anything. He's already full. The gopis say, you feed him always with your breast milk and in other ways of giving him his food, so he's really not hungry. But he just likes stealing. And when the monkeys are filled to the max, he becomes agitated. He breaks the pots. And then he leaves and goes to the next house to see is there an empty house, and just does this day after day in so many ways. And then Mother Jashoda reasons, well, you're intelligent. You must be able to devise some means to check him. Why not hide the butter and yogurt? If we hide the butter and yogurt, then he goes and doesn't find any butter and yogurt. He comes into where the children are, and the commentary of Vishnu says, he scratches them, the children, or pinches them, and they cry. And sometimes, well, then teach him. If you feel he's not doing properly, instruct him. We come and we instruct him. And he just laughs at us. And he just smiles. And we forget everything. It's pleasure pastimes. Now, what's the pleasure in stealing? It's not pleasure in stealing. It's all his. There's no stealing. But why the pleasure in stealing? Because in Leela, it creates an obstacle, and then overcoming the obstacle is part of Leela, part of life in the material world. But the material world obstacles we see as interfering with our sense gratification, because happiness is a life of sense gratification, and the removal of impediments to sense gratification, the obstacles, that's happiness with a different standard. And the happiness transcendentally is a different standard. There may be obstacles in devotional service. There may be obstacles. So why are you complaining? He likes to steal, and just let him steal. Just put it right out by your front door. If we do that, he won't take it. He's got to come and play all this mischievous activity. And they're speaking as if complaining, but it's part of the obstacle creation, happiness manifesting feature of Krishna's pastimes. Not easy for a moralist, not easy for a materialist to understand. Krishna loves cows. He's Gopal, Govinda. And so the fascination is not just milk and yogurt. It's the occupation of cowherds. It's their wealth. The cows and the products from the cows. It's their life. And it's his life too. But it's Prabhupada has used this statement sometimes that a sign, one of the signs of intelligence in a child is that they're a little mischievous. He gave a few examples. One of them was a child, I can't remember if it was him or another child, saw a drum, heard the drum make a sound, and the child poked a hole in the drum head to find out what was making the sound inside. And he said, that's intelligence, because where's the sound coming from? It's coming from inside the drum. So what's inside the drum is causing the sound. Or he gave the example from this one for sure himself. When he heard a radio, he thought there must be a musical band, like an orchestra, a group of musicians inside the box, because where's the sound coming from? And other examples. So having that, childhood curiosity, but intelligence that breaks the boundaries of, one might say, good conduct, worldly sense of good conduct, but it's a sign of intelligence. So Krishna is displaying this transcendental intelligence that he knows how to bring happiness to his loving devotees, and according to the loving devotees, he'll reciprocate. And he's not bound by convention, worldly convention. This is spontaneous love, and in a spontaneous way, Krishna is increasing their loving attraction for him, which may be in the form of an obstacle. Loving attraction for Krishna may be increased by obstacle. And it's, in Krishna's eternal pastimes is there, and so also in our worldly trying to become devotees, sadhana bhakti practitioners, there's obstacles. And those obstacles, in a similar way, if seen in a Krishna-intended fashion, it's to help us achieve deeper attachment for him and detachment from the temporary. So that's not the same rule in Vrindavan. It's just stimulation of ecstatic love, if one is on the platform of ecstatic love. If one is not, then obstacle has another purpose, not exactly stimulation of ecstatic love. The stimulation of ecstatic love is hearing of the pastimes. And that's one of the roles that the elder gopis are doing. They're speaking topics of Krishna. They come to her home and speak topics of Krishna. And when speaking topics of Krishna, it's stimulation for ecstatic love. This is Rupa Goswami's teaching. And sure enough, the ecstatic love of the gopis giving the narration, and Mother Jasoda hearing the narration, is stimulated. It increases the ecstatic love. And then, of course, they try to find solutions, and she's suggesting things. We tried that, and but there's the practical application of the ecstatic love, but it doesn't take away from the ecstatic love. It's a stimulation of ecstatic love. In all variegatedness, of course, dependent upon the position, but these are of each person. But they're very special souls taking part in Krishna's pastimes together. And his pastimes here reflect the pastimes of the spiritual world, or they're non different than the pastimes of the spiritual world. He's displaying his pastimes of the spiritual world here for the stimulation of ecstatic love of persons here. And the potencies to do so are within the pastimes. So, what do we understand about ecstatic love for Krishna? We're far from there. Nonetheless, the potencies have this investment of, the pastimes have investment of potencies to do this. It's just the nature of Krishna's pastimes. And therefore, hearing, reading, remembering, seeing visual paintings and other impressions of these pastimes are all meant for the same thing: purification, stimulation of ecstatic love. That's Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's the Sankirtan process of Lord Chaitanya, is to give this to everybody. Now, some people aren't going to understand. Who is going to understand? It's a rare group of people that are going to understand. Nonetheless, it's the Sankirtan process. Now, these more confidential pastimes are better reserved for people who have a little foundation in Bhagavad Gita and other spiritual teachings. But Prabhupada provided Krishna book even early on in the Hare Krishna movement, and had us distribute Krishna books by the zillions for the public. Even they hadn't read Bhagavad Gita, they didn't know first thing about Krishna. But he did it in such a way, purposefully, that not knowing whether he would get the opportunity to complete 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, which in fact he didn't, there is some record for even for worldly people to understand he who is often misunderstood by worldly people, at least to provide the opportunity or the means for people of the world and younger generation, children, who can then grow with not the misconception but the proper conception. During my recent travels, I met somebody who's American person who is now 60 years old, and they described when they were young and heard about Hare Krishna movement, they had a negative sense about the Hare Krishna movement because of, in their words, the airport thing and all that stuff. Yeah. And so I never really, but then took interest, but I've had a spiritual inclination and this and that and the other thing. Did this and did that and did the other thing. And then along came I forget which, some BBT publication, read Bhagavad Gita and found it was just what I was looking for. I wasn't finding elsewhere, and so I started becoming more interested. In the past number of years, I'm very attracted. Took a long time. So, the all-attractive Krishna is attractive, regardless of one's journey or one's position. And we, as representatives of Lord Chaitanya, are meant to receive, internalize, properly represent in the public. And it's hard to understand the public sometimes, because in different cultures, different things mean different, signals to different people. So being interested in helping people come closer and closer and closer to Krishna requires a little bit of understanding of culture, their culture, what's meaningful to them. Certainly good conduct and good character is universal, but there's other ways of inspiring or repelling people besides good character, good conduct. And inviting people to take to the process, however introductory that may be. Prasadam, mantra, whatever, without a list. And books, creating auspiciousness in the lives of persons who are surrounded by inauspiciousness, madness, ever-increasing degradation and loss of culture and character and, victims of Kali Yuga. Try to be exemplary persons in the matter of spiritual character and introduce people and gradually help them take the next step. That's Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan process. That's what we're involved in. Different ways for different types of people from different cultures and backgrounds and ways of thinking. But it leads to these stimulations of ecstatic love, given in the proper way, at the proper time, to the proper audience. And Krishna is all attractive. It's not the all attractive pastimes of Krishna may not be so easy to understand, but we have the assistance of our acharyas and even very, very specifically Prabhupada's explanation, his commentary. That's where the Sankirtan process takes one to Krishna Loka. However, gradually, the potencies are there. So end and see if there's some comments or questions from anybody. Yes?
Guru Maharaj, few verses behind, Srila Sukadeva Goswami is explaining how the anxiety that Mother Yasoda and Mother Rohini had when the children, Krishna and Balaram, were playing in the shed with the cows and horns, and animals with horns and animals with claws and weapons in the floor. So they were very mischievous, so they're getting all this anxiety, and Sukadeva Goswami explains that they're experiencing the anxiety of the parental affection, but the word that he used is a little puzzling, and I wanted to, we're trying to explain it, as per Srila Prabhupada, but the word that he used is they were equipoise. At that time they were fully equipoise in the transcendental ecstasy known as distress of material affection. So it qualifies as material affection and not spiritual affection or parental affection, but material affection.
You're reading Prabhupada's purport?
Yeah.
What's the verse number, please?
It's 25. It's a short purport, but Prabhupada,
Okay, let me take a look so I can respond. You want to know why is it saying material affection instead of spiritual affection?
yeah.
It says nothing about them is material. Oh, it's in the verse, says
In the
material.
verse, yes.
Knowing that the distress of the material affection for this was aroused within their minds. Well, I don't know why Prabhupada chose to say material affection and then in the purport is saying spiritual affection. I don't know why he translated it that way. He could have said spiritual affection, because that's what it is. But it looks like material affection, but in the purport he clarifies there's nothing material emotion in the spiritual world. So it looks like, but it's actually spiritual. We can relate to the material affection of parents being in anxiety over their children. By Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, it's spiritual affection, spiritual happiness. Okay. Looks like, but it isn't. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your class. You were talking about these stimulating pastimes. We hear that there's two, basically material stimulation and spiritual stimulation. So when you, in the material world, when people experience a lot of obstacles, like you were mentioning obstacles, the tendency is that to go to some material stimulation like alcohol or some other type of sense gratification to numb the difficulties in your life. As devotees, we may not go that far as, drink a bottle of alcohol, etc., but still some subtle form of sense gratification to numb the pain. The tendency is not to take shelter of Krishna, the stimulation, because so what are some steps we can move forward to take better shelter of Krishna and develop this stimulation when we're experiencing so many difficulties one after another?
Well, take the microphone. Good association. Good, regular, and strong sadhana, tolerance, and even specifically, when that feeling, it takes being mindful of what's going on, but when you're mindful of what's going on, that tendency to take shelter of something that's pain numbing, reach for your bead bag, or sit at the harmonium and sing kirtan, or read a verse from Bhagavad Gita or something. Prabhupada, because the material shelter taking gets to a point of it's not just because it's too much pain, I need to take shelter of something that mitigates the pain or distracts me from the pain, and it's just another ignorance. It becomes addictive. Just internet surfing, or Prabhupada's comment about smoking cigarettes. Whenever the urge comes, chant one round. Do something spiritual that gives satisfaction to the tongue instead of the satisfaction to the tongue that causes ignorance. Or there's this nice, one of Gandhi's nice sayings, when everything looks bleak and dark and the most difficult experiences of my life, I turn to Bhagavad Gita and I find solace and I find strength. That's what to do. When it looks dark and down and dirty, go to Bhagavad Gita, go to the holy name, go to kirtan, go to association. That's in the darkest moments, and the regular is clear the dark moments by strong sadhana, good association. And you having some persons you can go to when it looks really tough is a good thing to do. Go there instead of the place, the bad shelter, the bad habit. Recognize the bad habits and do something about it in this positive sense. It takes a little bit of being mindful to know that we're even doing those things, because otherwise we're mindlessly doing those things, and then it becomes habitual, just part of life. Anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.